Happy 2019, everybody. And so it has been tradition here on McGTV for the past couple of years. Before we start fresh into this new year of movies and all that good stuff, let's get the old year out of our system with both the best and worst of 2018. Again, some of these I've done video logs on already, so you can go check out those video logs when I mention them. Some of these I might get into a little more detail on. I'll try to keep it brief though and spoiler free because I want you to check out these films. First up though, let me list off the honorable mentions. These are movies that I still enjoy quite a bit. I'd still recommend, but as the year went on, or as I saw more movies, I had to kind of keep shuffling my order around, and eventually these ones got bumped off the top 10 list, so here they are. All right. Let's get into my top 10 list, the best of 2018, starting with number 10, A Quiet Place. I already mentioned what I liked about this film, the world building, the performances, the gimmick itself is a very interesting gimmick and utilization or underutilization of sound. Again, I mentioned that I wish the soundtrack wasn't quite what it was and that perhaps certain contrived endings didn't occur, but if they're gonna expand this out into a possible franchise, I guess, possibly, maybe, I don't know, well, good luck to you on that, Big Tuna, but for a nice one-and-done type of movie, I think it did its job very well, very efficiently. Number 9, Thoroughbreds. I watched it on a 9-hour flight, and I had to go back and rewatch it just because I just really got the performances. I really connected with these characters, even though these are some very scrupulous and, not heroes, definitely not heroes. These two girls, one comes from like a life of privilege, but she's kind of disillusioned with that. The other one is, no joke, clinically a sociopath, and even I found myself relating to her a little bit more than the privileged girl. I don't know if that says anything about me, but I like their story together. I like that they feel as though, okay, we can have something of a friendship based around this idea of the sociopathic girl wants to help out the privileged girl with a certain problem, and I'm not going to reveal what that problem is, but let's say it just leads to one of the most tense and minimal type of long takes I've ever seen in a movie, but I totally know what's going on, outside the scene, and it unnerves you. And of course, I gotta give out an MVP shout out to Anton Yelchin. This is his final film he made before he passed away a few years back, and he is just you can tell he's investing in this sneaky but pathetic type of character that feels whenever he can't get the upper hand on these girls, they always seem to outsmart him or outthink him, and he just plays that up for all it's worth. So great performance from Anton Yelchin, great performances all around. Thoroughbreds, again, thoroughly enjoyable. I'm terrible at puns. Number 8, The Other Side of the Wind. This was a Netflix release, touted up as being Orson Welles' last great unfinished movie, and you can tell it's kind of an unfinished movie. I don't know if that's intentional or not, because maybe that's all the editors, whoever they were, over the decades had to work with, rough cuts and just leftover film stock and things like that. But I kind of dug this story about this infamous Hollywood director in the 70s, his last night on Earth, and the mystery and intrigue that surrounds that. Played by John Huston, who I know best as being my first ever Gandalf in the Rankin Bass Hobbit movie. You got some appearances from Peter Bogdanovich, who, even though he's best known as a writer and director, he certainly has some acting chops on him in this movie. He plays it up very well. Red Letter Media fans will enjoy the fact that Cameron Mitchell shows up every once in a while to be very Cameron Mitchell-y. And there was just kind of this cool aesthetic going throughout the movie. I mean, the narrative, when you see it maybe in subsequent viewings, you get more of a sense of what the narrative is. It is very haphazardly edited, but I feel that is very intentional. It's kind of keeping in with the aesthetic of this is a story about Hollywood movers and pushers and some of the salacious stuff they find themselves entangled with. It works. Even though maybe some of it wasn't really a purposeful choice, it was just, well, we've got this footage that we got to use. I don't know how else to splice it in here other than to literally kind of splice it, to go from a very colorful, very pristine looking shot to footage of Orson Welles' girlfriend in grindhouse fashion. Sure, but it's an interesting film. It's an interesting movie if you want to see like the last-ditch effort of this avant-garde type of filmmaker and what someone else is trying to accomplish with his vision. Have at it. It was thoroughly enjoyable for me just from a stylistic perspective. Number 7, Sorry to Bother You. I didn't know what to expect with this movie going into it. At first I thought I was going to get something maybe more of a darker type of comedy than something like Office Space, if this was just going to be about a mundane office worker or telemarketer who works his way up the corporate ladder. And some plot beats I kind of was able to predict the trajectory of them, such as his relationship with Tessa Thompson. I kind of had a feeling of what that relationship was going to take. It was like, as he became more successful, they would become more distant and then reconcile. And certainly that's there. That's not the focus of the movie entirely. The focus of the movie is warning signs about capitalism, certainly, about putting so much faith in corporations, perhaps, being aware of what goes into the actual American workforce. Then Armie Hammer shows up for a lot more screen time and things get weird. I don't want to give away the reveal of what's going on behind the scenes in this movie, but it's got a nice mixture of Office Space, Get Out, Brazil, The Island of Dr. Moreau. So if you're fans of any of those movies, there's something for all of you. This movie, it didn't frustrate me about where it was going. I was thoroughly entertained because the performances are just as captivating. The visual setups of shots and the editing, certainly the way they kind of frame and structure him making his telemarketing calls is a really kind of cool gimmick that they use. It's a very stylistic movie. It takes place in this weird hyper-reality just apart from our own, and it gets even more hyper-reality as it goes on. But even with all the weird stuff that happens in the last third of the movie, I still enjoyed it. You will not be prepared for where this movie goes. Number 6, Upgrade. I said it in my video log about this movie. Solid action, solid lead performance, good atmosphere, good kind of setup of this world of a technologically advanced society, but not too far-flung. It's more just like we kind of enhance ourselves. Very much plays into that theme with its main narrative. Some things that I found maybe a little bit of disengagement from in the initial viewing, they weren't as big an issue when I saw the movie again. The genuine suspense you have on that initial viewing won't be there necessarily, but you'll still be thoroughly invested in the character's journey and in the downer it takes all of a sudden. This thing builds, and then torpedoes your love of humanity pretty quick. So that's why I'm recommending it. Number 5, Mandy. I totally get why people wouldn't like this movie. I've talked to people who haven't liked this movie, and I completely understand why. This typically would bother me, where style outweighs substance. In the case of Mandy, I just couldn't take my eyes off of it. It's very hypnotic. It's very ethereal and haunting at times. And Nicolas Cage, he doesn't say a lot in the movie, but you can tell he is putting us all into this performance. Everyone actually is. It feels like a drug trip because it is a drug trip. Linus Roach is doing a hell of a job. The titular Mandy, I can't remember the actress's name, but she is a persistent presence throughout the movie. You play up sympathy with her, you come to kind of love her character, but also she can be scary. It's got a little bit of stylings from Clive Barker type stuff, a little bit of the Evil Dead, like I said, the more entrancing red filtered hypnotic stuff, plays into some Argento style visuals at times. So it certainly is more entertaining to me on the on the style side of things more so than the plot. The plot is coming in second to the visuals and to the aesthetic they produce in the movie, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with Mandy being that movie of the year for me. Totally get it why you out there who saw it and didn't like it don't like it. I get it. It just speaks to me more so. I can't help it. And of course, the Cheddar Goblin. Can we all agree that we all love the Cheddar Goblin? Number 4, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs was another Netflix movie by the Coen brothers. It's a series of vignettes about the Wild Wild West and death. being the recurrent theme throughout all of those vignettes, death in various ways. But unlike some other movies, like say maybe Paris Je t'aime from a few years back, where I still like that movie, and the filmmakers who contributed to that movie, they provide their own little vignettes about love in Paris. Some of those are a little bit more hitting you over the head with the theme of love in Paris more so than others. Here in Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the theme of death is there, and it is a focal point, but it's not so blatantly obvious. It goes from some comedic stuff with the titular Buster Scruggs, Tim Blake Nelson. Like I said on Twitter, it looks like a little bit of Red Dead Redemption mixed with Smilin' Bob Enzyte commercials. I kind of like that as an opening. One of my favorite vignettes was Liam Neeson and Dudley from Harry Potter as a traveling performance duo, so to speak, where Dudley recites poetry and verse and so forth, but he doesn't have any arms or legs, so he's just sitting in a chair in front of spectators. And that took a very dark turn with very little dialogue aside from Dudley's oratory. To the wonderful Zoe Kazan, who I first saw on Broadway in A Beheading in Spokane with Christopher Walken. She's a very sympathetic and endearing character here. The most sympathetic person on a wagon trail there could possibly be. Even though there is a typical Coen Brothers downer of an ending for that vignette, I still kind of love that segment. But by far my all-time favorite in the whole movie, Tom Waits as this prospector panning for gold in a hilly, forested mountain area. And just something about that character and his never give up attitude. Even when his story arc takes a dramatic Coen Brothers downer turn, I still had a big smile on my face because I'm a Tom Waits fan. I like him a lot as a musician, as a storyteller, as a performer. Just to see him go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 nuggets. There's a vein of gold here, Mr. Mountain, and I'm gonna find it. Like, I don't know. I love that. That little bit of Copelandish Americana style storytelling that the Coen Brothers pulled off with just that one vignette sold me on Buster Scruggs. I enjoyed the movie overall, but that little moment, I don't know, it brought out a lot of warm feelings in me, even though this is a movie about death and murder and betrayal and soul-crushing loneliness. Out of Buster Scruggs. Number 3, Hereditary. Said a lot about it. In subsequent viewings, the one little issue I had with the narrative isn't as big a deal anymore. So Hereditary, solid film, suspenseful, goes to some places you were not ready for, some upsetting places maybe, along the themes of death, grief, and loss, and madness. And Toni Collette scares the bejesus out of me. Number 2, Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. Even though I only saw this movie a couple of weeks ago, man, this is a great just love letter to a character I love. It celebrates what does work about the character, whatever version of the character you love, whether it's Peter Parker, whether it's Miles Morales, whether it's Gwen Stacy as Spider-Gwen. It's fun, it's vibrant, it's colorful, it's stylistic, and of course, having one of the most emotionally satisfying and also heartbreaking Stan Lee cameos ever. Rest in peace, Stan. Let's have more of this, more of a celebration of a hero and what that hero embodies. And don't be afraid to poke fun at him every once in a while. What could possibly be number 1 for me? Well, number 1 actually was a documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor, the Fred Rogers documentary. I saw this on the flight, a 9-hour flight as well, and I had tears in my eyes at the end of it. It is a great chronicling of not just Fred Rogers' life and his work on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but a great chronicling of his ministry and his teachings and his life lessons that are still very relevant today, whether you got to hear him speak, read anything he ever wrote, or even as just a kid like me, happened to see him on TV on PBS one day. Those teachings and those experiences are still just, as fulfilling as they were the first time you saw them. That message of perseverance through struggle, of wanting to be kind instead of cruel, of wanting to just pass on a message of love. As cheesy, as corny as that sounds, it permeates this entire documentary and does it so well with all the people that were involved in Fred Rogers' life. It is what great filmmaking is about. A lot of these films I recommended for sheer entertainment value, for sheer insanity, for unique styles in their storytelling. This I recommend to you as being a film that gets its message so well across, so succinctly, but also with so much investment in their subject matter. You'll leave it feeling like you're going to be asking the question that they asked all the interviewees at the end of the documentary of like, who or what inspires you? Who or what holds such significance for you in your life? It was a question I found myself asking at the end of it, what brought me to tears a little bit at the end of the movie. Without a doubt, one of the more fulfilling experiences seeing a film this past year. And it feels kind of weird to end on such an uplifting note with Won't You Be My Neighbor on this video, because the next video, it's all about stuff that, as much as I just spoke about love and understanding, I didn't particularly love, and I still quite don't understand. So stay tuned.